Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow. We're getting together tonight on a night. Well, it's been so quiet that nothing's happening in the world of motorsport or Formula One. It's all they're on a break at the moment. Nothing's happening at all. Supercars and who knows? I mean, there's nothing happening behind the scenes. No racing, nothing big happened in race. It's all been very, very. I have no idea what we're going to talk about tonight. Yes, I do. Yes, we've got a lot to talk about tonight. We've got Formula One. The Oscar Piastri saga continues, and Alpine shot itself in the foot. Also, news behind the scenes with supercars as well. Movements in terms of who owns what in the world of supercars, and a really worrying trend. So in all of the discussion that's come up about supercars came the news that Race, the people who now own supercars, the consortium who basically bought out Archer Capital, amongst their plans at the moment is to buy ARG Australian Racers Group, which is the group led by Barry and Gary Rogers and Brian Boyd. Who run S5000, Trans Am Australia, TCR, all of those sort of categories in the Speed Series. And now there's a story that the supercars are looking to buy into that and actually buy them out. And I think that's going to be a real worry, because it basically means we'll have a monopoly of all professional level motorsport in Australia will essentially be run by one organisation, and that organisation will be supercars. So we'll talk a bit about that during the show, and we'll catch up with all of you in just a moment. Joining me this weekend, we've got Doc, we've got Richard, and we've got Pete as well. G'day, guys. How are you?
Evening, Brett. Evening, gentlemen.
Thank you.
There we are. Richard's mic is working, so this is good.
Yes.
We don't know, Pete, you're still on mute.
Yep. Hello. There we are. Mine routed through Sarden Springs to get here.
Yeah. So we got there. So let's bring up some news, and we'll also bring up some.
Alex Albon's right at the bottom there. Jeez, Did anyone read his tweet today?
No, what's Alex been saying? Apart from thank God,
he took the Piastri out of Piastri.
Oh, okay.
He worded his tweet exactly the same as what Oscar did, and
okay. I will be driving.
Yeah, so Oscar replied, "Well played, sir," or something along those lines. So just a bit of fun between the current and to be drivers, but
it's certainly been. Certainly been quite chaotic. Let's introduce the cast of characters who are joining us tonight as well. Some of them are there. Mad Cow Mark, g'day Mark, how are you? Cheers to you again. We've also got Box is joining us again. Box. Tony P is with us again. Good evening to Tony P. Our mate Roy, Virtual R. Evening to Roy, from our sponsor Online Invent, for the new series of In Pit Lane starting. Here's some more Formula One news. Brett Sellers is also not driving for Alpine next year. As Brett said, I got him for a day. It's not my line. Brett. It's everybody's line at the moment. It's actually Oscar's line, really.
I'm not. I'm in the Greek Isles. Didn't everyone know? Oh, sorry, no, I'm on a video. Oh, I'm not sure where I am at the moment. Can someone sign me a contract? Someone tell me where I am.
We can say hello to Paul Shaw. G'day, Paul. How are you? Long time viewer of the program, and also Maurice. Maurice joining us. Why can't supercars be Ford, Chevrolet, and Dodge? Well, that's the interesting thing, because of course Trans Am, to an extent, they do have the Dodge Challenger in there as well, even though all those cars are all powered by the one engine, by the Chev engine. At least the body shells are different. There won't be a Dodge, because they don't sell that car at all. As far as I know, Chrysler are very low key in Australia now. Not sure whether they sell anything at all here still. So there wouldn't be any money involved in the homologation, because the manufacturers do have to put up the money for the.
They pulled out
for the homologation, but that's the advantage of Trans Am, is you do have the opportunity If you have a look at what they're doing, say, in South Africa, I mean, yes, they've got the Mustang and the Dodge and the Camaro, but they've also got Jaguars, they've also got Commodores and Falcons and all sorts of things. Basically, on that platform, they just drop all sorts of different bodies on and gives it a bit more variety. So
Morris has got a point there. If you're going to have Ford, because the Mustang is sold in Australia, Chevrolet aren't going to be manufacturing their Camaro here or selling it. So why should the
well, no, they are.
Camaro
General Motors are selling the Camaro.
They are?
Yeah, they are. Yes, yeah, they're selling the Camaro. The Camaro and the Corvette are both.
Who through? What dealerships?
Through General Motors, through dealerships, through General Motors.
What dealerships?
Well, there's going to be some special dealership, but it is coming through the. It's not coming through Walkinshaw or somebody like that. It's coming direct from General Motors.
Because that's what there's no dealerships at the moment. Zitch. So I'd just like to know who's going to be selling them.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're still selling the they're still selling the commercial stuff of the Colorado and things like that. So there's obviously some dealer somewhere. But anyway, But anyway, that's.
It is. It's just an interesting topic because I mean, there's Ford everywhere, and you still buy a Ranger, you can still buy the new Bronco, you can still buy. Plenty of Mustangs are coming over, even though limited supply sometimes. But yeah, it just doesn't seem to be. I mean, Chrysler do have a couple of dealerships as well going as well too. Well, actually, that'd be a good question for as you mentioned, Gary and Barry Ryan, because when they sold up in Pakenham, their Supercars dealership they had many years ago, they went to Chrysler. And it was a Chrysler dealership there for a long time. So, yeah, I'll have to be with Barry out the road.
They did try to get Chrysler in, but I think it fell over.
Yeah, I think they've tried to get everybody, and certainly Walkinshaw was really hard. Pretty much tried everybody, I think, before eventually, and of course they're now moving for next year. They're going to be moving to the Mustang body as well. So that's. So that's Walkinshaw gone as well, but the Camaro is out there, and it's General Motors who are helping and doing the homologation for the Gen 3. And it's interesting. There was more testing done at the Bend this week, and Todd Hazelwood was saying that he really loves the new car. He said it feels very different. He said the torque is fantastic. He said it sounds great. He really likes the new car and says he thinks it's going to be some. They're going to be really popular, and people will really like them. Yeah, so Nick would have been there as well. So it's interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, at least it gives us something new to look at. I mean, but the novelty won't last all that long because ultimately it'll still be essentially a two-make series. Although at least the engines are different enough now, so there'll be a very different sort of engine note from each of those. Each of those places. Okay, so anyway, let's talk about the story of the week. Of course, was we reported sort of last week before just as we were going to air last week, we reported on the fact that Sebastian Vettel had announced his retirement and was leaving Aston Martin. Then, of course, a few days later, we heard that Fernando Alonso was on the move to replace him at Aston Martin, which of course opened the door for Oscar Piastri to drive at Alpine. Of course, Alpine duly announced that Oscar Piastri will be driving for Alpine in 2023. Until Oscar went, not so fast, Mr. Bond. No, that's not happening. I am not driving for Alpine, and Alpine went, well, that's the first we knew about that. Now it's sort of come out that it would appear that a deal has been done with McLaren. Although McLaren have said nothing officially. McLaren have said nothing officially.
Got a
But,
hair trigger, exactly. Yeah.
but it's almost certain that it is with McLaren. McLaren has said nothing. All the words, words behind all the news behind the scenes indicates that it is McLaren. McLaren are staying stum at the moment. They're just saying nothing. But so that opens up a couple of things. For Alpine, it was all nice and easy, wasn't it? I mean, it was. We'll have, the original plan was we'll have, Fernando for another year. We'll farm out Oscar to Williams. He'll get a year of experience, a year of driving on a regular basis. Fernando will have another year, and then at the end of the year, Fernando will pop over to our hypercar program, and then Oscar will, with a year of racing under his belt, will transfer across. It was just so simple. And it didn't work out that way. So, yeah, I mean, Pete, what do you think will happen?
And also, apparently, Alpine didn't know that Fernando was going off to Aston. They didn't know.
No.
Yeah, so it appears
they found out exactly the same time we did when the press release came out.
Hence so my lower third. Did you read my lower third when they actually said to him, so have you given Alonso Fernando a contract? And he said, yeah, he's over in the Greek islands. No. Alonso put up a tweet and said a picture. I'm in my hometown. So where's the Greek islands? So, I mean, someone needs to ask Alpine, what the hell is going on down there?
Well, I think that's the point. I think there's a bit of disarray in Alpine, and I think it's been going on longer than now, because apparently Alain Prost left because they weren't communicating with him. They froze him out, and so I think there's a bit of disarray in Alpine. It'll be interesting to see. I read that Schumacher's Haas drive is under threat, but I don't see Daniel going that far to Haas. I don't see that happening. Maybe he could decide that Renault is not so bad after all, Alpine is not so bad after all, and go back there.
Well, Alpine have already put up, they've already put up their hand and said, we don't have a problem if Daniel, it's not necessarily, even though we left under sort of, difficult circumstances, you sort of let them by walking out on them. But that was part of the reason Daniel did leave. All of that, the problem they were having with Alain Prost, all of the lack of communication, the arguing between all the different sides of the organisation. That was apparently one of the reasons that Daniel thought the writing might be on the wall, because when he left, there was certainly talk at the time that Renault might be ready to pull out of Formula One completely, because, and eventually the deal was done to, morph it into Alpine and use that brand and the marketing money that they put into Alpine and concentrate on and actually embrace the performance side of the company. But Renault itself have said, as a brand for Renault, their future is all electric, and they've got no interest in putting the brand through Formula One or hypercar or anything. That's what Alpine's for. Alpine's, so Renault can sit there and go, oh no, we embrace the green future, and we're all electric, and we don't. Alpine, that's totally separate. So they can wash their hands of it.
Otmar, how do you pronounce it? Otmar Safnor. He's the team boss at Alpine. Is doing a special guest appearance at Saturday Night Live this week in America, where he's going to be asked questions by the whole world, and let's just see if he can get any of them right whatsoever. Because he's the one that's been the team boss and the outspoken person on what's been going on, and he does not know what is going. Seriously, if he's saying all these words and being quoted for him and being interviewed and podcast and everything, they need Alpine need to have a serious look on who their team boss is and what information is being given to him or what he's talking about.
Effectively, there's two of them and another guy whose name escapes me. So there's two of them.
Well, Otmar's the one that's actually said, when he was said, oh, okay, have you forwarded a contract to Alonso? Yes, we have. He wants 1 year. He wants 2 years. We want 1 year. Have you talked to him? Yeah, I talked to him on Friday just before we started the weekend. He said he has signed with no one and he is staying with us and he's happy. He's over on a boat in the Greek Isles. I can't contact him. Completely wrong. Absolutely 110% wrong. So what on earth is going on there? He's got to be on Saturday Night Live on this weekend in America. Has to be.
Well, it's going to be interesting. I mean, the problem is, I mean, it raises a few issues in terms of where he ends up, you know, like in terms of Oscar. And I just hope that it doesn't sort of can't reflect badly on him, because what's obviously happened is, you know, there's been some negotiations behind the scenes, and I mean, Alpine have been dithering in terms of, like, they needed to make the tough decision on Alonso, and they wouldn't make it. They had it in their mind that this would all just fall, the pieces would all just fall together beautifully, and it would all be smooth sailing, and they had it all in their mind that this was what was going to happen. But then, you know, Alonso said no, and then then he got a better offer, because, you know, once Sebastian pulled the plug, that just, you know, the whole thing, you know, the whole grenade exploded, and suddenly Alonso was in the line for the Aston Martin thing, and once again, you know, Sebastian Vettel, when he left, apparently was pushing Lawrence Stroll to try and get Schumacher across by saying, well, here's the ideal opportunity to bring Mick across, and they've said no. They wanted the experience of somebody like Fernando, and they've apparently offered him a lot more money than he was getting at Alpine, and they've offered him a longer contract, which at this stage is 2 with an option. So, and now Alpine have come out and officially said, well, no, we were never going to give him 2. We were certainly not going to give him 2 with an option because of his age. We thought, you know, we'll get another year out of him, but then, you know, quite clearly they were probably looking at moving him onto the Le Mans project, and that would be his retirement package. But that didn't happen.
It's a conspiracy theory, but has anyone checked Mark Webber's and Fernando Alonso's phone records?
Yeah, someone sort of raised a couple of people raised that, saying they're on fairly good terms. So
they're great friends. So, and they have each other's phone number, and you can't tell me that behind the scenes they wouldn't have at least been messaging each other or so, what's going on here, what's going on there, what do you want to do, what's going on? They're not saying they played them like a fiddle, but, you know, has anyone checked their phone records?
Yeah, Mark is saying, Mad Cow Mark is saying that he's having his own communication problems after the storm last night. Yes, the storm hit very quickly last night. My internet was down for quite a bit of the day, but thankfully, last night. Last night was okay. No, not here. It wasn't. Not for about 40 minutes. It wasn't. It absolutely poured down, and there was thunder and lightning and hailstones and all manner of things. It was crazy. About 1 o'clock in the morning.
2 nights ago was the one that actually caused all the damage and a couple of thousand SPS calls and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, see, we didn't get any of that here. I missed that, but last night we copped it here. And the power went out for about 4 hours, and the internet was down and when I got up in the morning, but it came back up obviously soon. But anyway, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Richard, I mean, have you been watching on? Have you been approached to race for Alpine yet?
Well, I know things can't be too good for Mark. I should say for Ricardo. I'm thinking of putting a barbecue on mid-season for him because I don't know how certain he's going to be traveling around Europe with the
Weber barbecue.
That's an excellent idea. That's excellent. And things aren't generally going well. I'm hoping for my car. I bought one of Tickford's race cars, Heimgartner's old car. Yeah, that's coming in 3 transporters.
Oh, it's in great shape, I heard.
Yes.
Yes,
that was a big hit.
Would have cost a pretty coin, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think they had a they had a bit on it, and the thing's bent from the front to the back.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was very scary.
Right to the very back.
It was a scary accident.
Very. Any time that happens, it's a really scary accident. And of course, knowing both those guys, because we know Tom very well, but also Andre's been a guest on a number of occasions. He's a really nice guy. And yeah, I mean, to see that when as soon as Tom stalled, it was like, oh, you just hang on and say, let's hope everyone misses. And of course, in the end, they didn't. But it does. It's once again, it's testimony to the safety of the car. Thomas's his heel, I think, is very badly bruised, and of course they both sort of knocked around from just the sheer violence of the crash. But in terms of that, apart from that, there's no major injuries, and thankfully, because they made the decision to move those fuel cells, there was no fire. Because if you remember, like years ago, they just had to, like any of those, a couple of those.
Grindler, yeah.
There we saw it, Oran Park, and then we saw it. Yeah, and then we saw it, Barbagallo as well. Both of them. Both of them went up, and so
Randall's using the wildcard car. What's Heimgartner using? I can't remember.
He was just using one of the cars. What they call the chassis? That one was called Kathy. Seriously?
Right, yeah. Well, they're going to have to come up with a new one now, because both those cars. For Sandown, Thomas is going to jump into the car that Zach Best did so well. And congratulations to Zach Best. No matter what people say about the tyres and all and the mess that happened there, the fact is the kid can say, I was on pole on debut in my Supercar Championship debut. I was on pole. No one's ever going to take that away from him. So and he performed pretty well. He performed well all weekend. So he's obviously one to watch for the future. So yeah, well done to Zach Best. But very very unfortunate for the two teams involved with the crash, because both the cars are absolutely a cactus now. So not sure what happens with Heimgartner's car. They're just going to have to pull together some spares and build up a new car for Sandown.
Richard's backyard.
Yeah,
it's going to be I think on the monkey bar for the kids. I think that chassis.
Yes, I think so. Yes, in terms of the Piastri stuff, our mate Dave Stillwell is saying you can check the phone, but might encounter the same problem the former White House occupants had. They are no longer available. Yes, plead the fifth, cool. and all that. But the interesting thing about getting back to Oscar is that you really do hope that it doesn't, because as someone said, if he does end up at Alpine, and I wouldn't be surprised that he does, because this is going to have to go to Formula One, contract. What do they call it? Contract review
or something like that. I can't remember.
So they've got a good idea. In order to try and keep these things out of court, they set up a review board which will have a look at all of this, and I think they will. I think they will ultimately find that Alpine will have the rights to have Oscar there, and the problem is now in terms of what the relationship is going to be like, because we know that he's saying I don't want to drive for Alpine. We know that
he doesn't. No, the contract for signing him on finished at the end of the last month, so they can't have him. That's why That's why he said no.
Well, no, Alpine is saying they had him for next year at least.
Yeah, Alpine are insisting that is not the case. It's also the case that quite clearly before that date expired, that Mark Webber had spoken with whoever, but it was probably McLaren, probably Zach Brown, to organise to effectively have set up a contract while Oscar was still under contract to Alpine. Now,
they do that.
No. In many cases, no. In many cases, in fact, in some parts in Australia and the United States, if you're under contract, that is a big legal no-no. You can't encourage somebody to break a contract.
Good luck finding that, because if they were doing it, it'd be very well hidden and it wouldn't exist, because that can't be proven. But once that contract expired that wasn't signed by, he had an out clause. So anything that happened beforehand, I bet you good luck trying to find it, because you wouldn't want to. Otherwise, it's going to wreck your whole case for doing it. So, but it also quite clearly shows that McLaren have sort of written off Dan Ricciardo.
So saying in terms of now, this means there's a couple of things that this means. Either they're going to they're saying right now that they can't just get rid of Ricardo. The only one who can sort of break the contract is Dan himself. And so there's a couple of possibilities. One is that they've spoken with Daniel, and Daniel has said, okay, if Oscar's coming in, fellow Aussie and all the rest of it, you pay me out. We'll negotiate. We'll negotiate a fee, and I'll go somewhere and I'll walk out with with a good amount of money, and perhaps go to another team, or perhaps go to another form of the sport, or something. Or if that deal wasn't done, that's going to end up in one hell of a fight as well, because they're going to... So what happens if they do get Oscar, and it's like, how do they get rid of Daniel without having to pay an extraordinary amount of money? They're going to have to pay Oscar's wage for next year, but they're also going to have to pay Daniel's as well, and for Daniel just sit around in his Monaco apartment and look out and say, oh, isn't life lovely? I wonder what's happening. Oh, there's Formula One. No, I don't think I'll bother watching that.
Well, we're going to go hypotheticals and just say it does unfold to that extent, then the proposition has already been flouted that the team that he goes to pays out as well too for having his services back to McLaren, and everyone ends up with an even keel. So that could happen as well too. That there's that fathom.
But the only place he'd want to go now, in terms of would have to be Alpine, because as Pete was saying, it certainly could be a spot come up at Haas, but because it looks like Schumacher has fallen out of favour with Haas. So if he was to, and Alpine were looking at Gasly, well, Gasly's now signed again. So where else could Daniel go? I mean, he's got at the moment, he's got Haas. He could replace Latifi at Williams, and I don't think he'd want that either. And anywhere he goes is going to be a step down, unless he goes to Alpine, which is going to be, on current form, a step sideways.
Yeah.
If he goes back to Alpine, his first statement's going to be, this place is a shambles, get it together.
Well, he won't be in a position to say much at all, because he should be just grateful that he's going to still have a drive in Formula One if he does.
And he apparently had a good relationship with the mechanics and everyone.
Oh, he did, yeah.
Yeah, they all wanted. They certainly all wanted to keep him there. It wasn't anything on their part that they, and that's what Oscar is sort of saying, that he's saying, look, we had a really good, everybody in the team had a great relationship with Daniel. We were disappointed that he left. It was nothing on our side to sort of, so obviously we were disappointed that he left, but let bygones be bygones. He hasn't burned any bridges as far as we're concerned, and if that was to come out, we certainly wouldn't be ruling it out. So, it's not as if they're saying, like after he left, he'll never come here again. They've sort of said they've at least left the door ajar and said, okay, well, we might be interested, especially if McLaren are going to be paying most of his wages.
Well, what it boils down to is on both occasions, Daniel Ricciardo left whatever team he was coming from, doesn't matter who it is now, left to go to a better team to go to McLaren. Oscar's doing exactly the same thing. He has got some obligation to him, whether we'll work it out, and he wants to go to McLaren too because he wants to go to a better team. So Daniel and Oscar have done exactly the same thing, but slightly different backgrounds.
Well, no, but it's very different when you consider the amount of huge amounts of money, time, and effort that Alpine have invested.
Over $1 million this year.
Oh, way more than it'd be way more than that. I mean, they've given just extraordinary amounts, and this is going back to. I mean, when did he sign on with Alpine? It was in Formula 3, was it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was definitely. Yeah, I think so.
So he's come, so they've backed him all the way through Formula 3, all the way. He wasn't there long. I mean, so they brought him through.
And McLaren. He's basically had a similar path to Lewis Hamilton had with McLaren.
Yeah, they've brought him through all the way, and they brought him in. It was only sort of, unfortunately, Alonso just got in the road. He was the log jam, and they just didn't have a spot for him. And but that's where they could trip themselves up. They were so keen to keep Alonso on side. I mean, if they, in hindsight, and if they'd have had the courage, they could have, if like I would have turned around and said, "You've done a great job, Fernando. But long term, this kid is the future. We put a lot of money into him. He won Formula 4, he won Formula 3, he won Formula 2. We want him. Sorry, Fernando, you can hang around and you can race our hypercar, but otherwise, goodbye. We can't lose this kid." And they didn't do that. They tried to have their cake and eat it too, and now they got caught with no cake.
Well, maybe they did say that to him, and that's why Alonso did what he did. So maybe that was obviously the discussion. Didn't go public, of course.
Well, they tried to keep him for that year, though. I mean, they tried to be clever by keeping him for a year and having the best of both worlds. We'll have a year of, we'll get an extra year out of Fernando because he's driving well at the moment. He's doing okay, and we can farm out Oscar to a team to get a year of driving and race experience under his belt, and then after the year, he comes in. He's got 12 months. He's got 12 months of racing experience, of running in all the tracks, of going through the weekends, of doing whatever he does into that team, and he's going to come in sort of a much better driver in 2024. Unfortunately, Fernando wasn't playing deal. The moment Fernando said, no, it's 2 years, or they should have said, okay, here's the deal, Fernando, it's 1 year or you're gone. Okay, goodbye, Fernando. Anyway.
You can't blame him for trying. As I said, I'm not trying to defend him. I'm very
all of them. You can't blame for trying. You can't blame Mark Webber. You can't blame Oscar.
You can't blame them all.
Oh no, they're obviously and Alpine did it. If Alpine had, I mean, he still hasn't had his free practice session yet. I mean, looking at Logan Sargent is apparently going to be running soon. They've had all these other people. How many free practice sessions has Robert Kubica had? I mean, what the hell is that? I mean, great. It's great to see Robert back behind the wheel of a Formula One car again, but that's not going anywhere. Yeah. I mean, that's not. They're not sort of. He's not a young up and coming talent anymore. I mean, his Formula One days are well and truly behind him. So, what's been the point of that? Oscar hasn't even got that free practice session, and it's like, oh, it'll happen at Silverstone, it'll happen here, it'll happen, and it keeps getting pushed further and further back. And so you can understand his frustration and the frustration of Mark Webber of saying, okay, make a decision, guys, and make it quickly. And they haven't. They've just said, no, we can just sit back and it'll be fine. No, they've really messed it up. So,
well, if they get Daniel, they haven't messed up. They've got a good plan Z.
Well, that's if they do get as Roy's saying. I think Alpine would be better suited to Dan's driving style. Yeah, and I think that would be. I think that'd be very true as well, because Fernando seems to be very comfortable in it, and it seems to be the older drivers. Some of the older drivers are finding these new cars more of a challenge than the younger ones, because Sebastian said they're very, very difficult. He said he understands Dan struggles with it. Fernando has done a lot better in the Alpine than the others have done. A lot of people have said that they are a very, very different car to drive than the previous cars. So
let's just say this all gets sorted out by the end of the year. What will be the most interesting part we're going to look forward to in a few months' time is where it doesn't matter where Oscar's driving, whether it's a McLaren or he's driving an Alpine or he's driving a billy cart down the hill, how he will go up against Lando Norris or how he'll go up against Esteban Ocon. So that will be the litmus test.
Brett, what are you saying, that the Alpine is sort of the Zimmer frame of Formula One?
Yeah, well, it's a very fast Zimmer frame. They've done extraordinarily well, and Fernando has done extremely well. That's what made it really difficult for them. I mean, like if Fernando had been way off the pace and struggling, and struggling to out-qualify, the lucky guy in all of this, I think, is Ocon. Yeah. Because, I mean, he's a young guy and he hasn't set the world, you would expect him to be doing what Lando's doing, and to an extent what George Russell is doing within that team. You would expect him to be substantially faster than Fernando. And because Fernando had, let's face it, had several years off. I mean, yes, he did race at Le Mans in a very fast car, but I mean, that was not Formula One. He took a few years off, had a bit of a dabble, very quick dabble at the Indy 500, and now has come back in and is faster than his young teammate. So...
Well, there's a good question. Fernando, at the end of the year, when he has his holiday wherever in Spain, which is probably really Australia, ask him what he's, once he's left the team completely and can contractually not say anything, how was the car when you were there in comparison to any other car you've driven lately? There you go. Yeah. And he might get an honest answer from Fernando.
Well, it'll be interesting. But anyway, Box is saying that, that's the Alpha's Orlen is a Polish company. Okay, so that would make sense. It was that'll be where the money's where the money's coming from. So yeah, okay, you can see that. See, that's the thing.
Yeah,
I mean, sort of Oscar is not bringing money. Daniel is not bringing money. So it's not as if they can just put up their. But in terms of Daniel, I'd really hate to see him end up at somewhere like Williams with the form they are at the moment. I would much rather he pulled the plug and just said if he's going to be out of McLaren and if he can't get at least the standard of Alpine, that he perhaps turns around and says, okay, I'll pull the plug myself and there, because he's achieved, he's done really well. He's won 8 Grands Prix. He's got nothing to be ashamed of. He's had a great career, and he's got other things to do. I mean, we know that he's going to be very popular in the media. He's also talking about dabbling in documentary and film production and all sorts of things like that. We know that he's got a big America file. We know that he's probably going to end up, rather than come back to Australia he's probably going to end up doing stuff in America, whether he gets involved in IndyCar or NASCAR or anything like that, who knows? But he's got nothing to be ashamed of, and I don't think he's got anything to prove. If he can't be somewhere where he can have a reasonable chance of finishing in the top 10 every week, then I really think that he'd be much better off just pulling the plug. But especially if somebody's going to give you $25 million to stay at home. If I'd be happy if I could get $2,500 to stay at home. That would keep me there. Okay, let's move on. Yes, supercars. What an interesting thing we've got. We've got Brian Boyd from Pace. If you see the sponsorship in Touring Car Master, Pace. That's Brian Boyd is the man there, and he owned roughly 15% of shares in Supercars. He's also a partner with Gary and Barry Rogers in the Australian Racers Group. Well, he's sold his shares in Race, which is the people who now own and run Supercars Australia. And so he's got out of that and he sold it to an investment company. The investment company are looking to get more shares, and now there's a suggestion come out that Race want to buy the Australian Racers Group, which, as I said before, I think is something that the ACCC really needs to have a look at, because if you talk about a monopoly,
there it is.
Supercars will end up running basically every professional or semi-professional level of motorsport in Australia. I mean, pretty much the only thing that'll be left that won't be under their control will be state racing and a couple of things like perhaps production cars and sports sedans and a few of those sort of categories.
Hyundais.
But
you're driving for Alpine next year anyway. What are you worried about your Hyundai for?
But that's the problem that they've got at the moment, is that if they do end up in control, I mean, what sort of future especially for a category like Trans Am? We know that they were very keen. Race were very keen to make sure that Shane van Gisbergen didn't race the Trans Am this weekend at Queensland, and ultimately that was, I mean, they've let him run rallies, they've let him run speedway stuff, they let him run the open wheeler in New Zealand, but the Trans Am was a definite no-no. So that was off the table. We saw just recently when Peter Adderton wanted shots of the Boost sponsored Trans Am and the Boost sponsored Supercar at the bend to get a photo of the two of them. Supercars almost threw themselves in front of the camera and said, "No, no, no, this isn't. No, you're not. This is not to happen." So you can see that they're a little bit worried about, because for this weekend for the Trans Am and Queensland Raceway, there's 29 cars entered, and that's certainly not the total number that are running around, because there is that secondary competition, the TA2 competition, which is running with AASA. There's some people there who aren't racing in Trans Am Australia in the main series, so they could, for a big race, they could easily get over 30 cars.
The other thing too, I think to consider is about the whole picture of it too, Brett, and this becomes immediate if this sort of transaction happens to occur pretty soon, is that we all know that some tracks are owned by some very glamorous and loud. Has some glamorous and loud ownership, like say there might be a Fox-related Phillip Island or a Tony Quinn Queensland Raceway, something like that. But some of the other smaller tracks that are always, and Sam Shaheen, OTR over there in Adelaide, but there are other tracks, and sometimes not maybe some strong lobbying bodies that actually own other tracks and trying to get a round of a particular event, which may not necessarily be supercars, it could be anything, and they get leaned on and says, I'm sorry, but no, you're not going and racing there. As you said, a monopoly could really be, what's the word for it, have adverse effects on tracks and sponsorship and competitors and everyone across the whole of Australia, if not the ditch across that long white cloud we go across over there. It could really have some adverse effects. As if you said, if it just comes to a photo opportunity, no, you're not standing in front of that and taking a picture of that. Imagine the 1984 style trajectory that the projection we could see of how things are portrayed in the whole of right across the boards. So there are people like Foxy who would stand up, and there are other couple that are saying no, etc. like this. But the other thing as well too, you've got Sam Shaheen's come out in the last couple of days and he's obviously just had his round of supercars over there, which wasn't well attended, was well watched on TV, on live stream or TV. Whichever format you're watching, but at the same time got mixed reactions overall. You've got the Adelaide round coming back up later on this year. It's now got a sponsorship as well too. There was some supercar drivers that were on promo in the last couple of days too, taking some great shots over there, and they're spending the most amount of dollars they have ever spent before on resurfacing the track in Adelaide. So it just worries me, like Brett's given us the big picture on there, that things may not be really what they seem when it comes to the bright, shiny lights.
Well, the point is that the ACCC, part of their purview is to ensure that there is competition and there is fair and equal competition. Now, in terms of motorsport at a professional level, I'm sure that race will argue that, well, there is competition. There's the stuff that's running with AASA. There's if people don't want to race with us, they can race with AASA. They could race at a state level. That's not free and fair competition. If they turn around and say, okay, well, I can see a point of them wanting to say TCR, because for major events, like the Adelaide race and Newcastle and all the rest of it, they've only got the two manufacturers in Ford and Chev. If they bring in TCR at those meetings as well, they also get Honda. Honda are directly involved. Hyundai are directly involved. They've also got dealers like Renault. So Renault Australia have got a definite involvement. So that adds another 3 or 4 potential manufacturers or sponsors that will come in and buy corporate entertainment and all the rest of it. And and have factory involvement in that big show. But then what do they do with Trans Am? Do they just push that aside and try and kill it off? What do they do with S5000? Will they have any interest at all in S5000? Will they just sort of walk it away? And as Roy's pointing out there, it's going to be really bad for media and fans, because it's bad for us in terms of media. It's really bad for us now. I mean, as he pointed out, you can't put 20 seconds of video without being hunted down. Someone the other day. Well, someone the other day put something up on Facebook, just to make a little comment about something. It was a bit of a meme. It was 11 seconds of footage from the bend, and that 11 seconds was taken down within a matter of 45 minutes, with all sorts of warnings that if you do this again, your account is being shut down, because Supercars have the rights to this. Now, he had every right to put that up. It was quite within the Australian copyright law. He had every right to put that up. It was clearly for the purpose of review, news, or parody. It comes under the terms of the fair use provisions, fair dealing provisions, Section 28 of the, from memory, it's Section 28 of the Australian Copyright Act. And it's perfectly legal for them to put that up. That doesn't matter to YouTube. It doesn't matter to Facebook. Basically, might is right. And if they get control of everything, like right now, coming up for Sandown, when we get back on air, we will have people. We will probably have someone from Trans Am. We will probably have someone from TCR coming up to promote that meeting and talk about that meeting and be able. We basically can't get anybody from Supercars anymore. Every time we talk to somebody from Supercars, the drivers say, "Yeah, we'd love to come on. You'll have to go through Supercars media." We talk to Supercars media, and they go, "Oh, I'm sorry, they're not available to anybody except Foxtel."
Yep.
So what happens? That just shuts out motorsport. Professional level motorsport will be shut out completely from the mainstream media, and it'll be just like if you want to cover motorsport, that's in pit lane. That's not a problem. You cover the state series. Anything above the state series, you'll be hearing from our lawyers.
It's a shame. I don't want to jump on my soapbox either, on the orange box either, but people are just missing out on such a diverse landscape of what goes on in motorsport that they might want to take an interest in, because they see all this. As you said, they only get seen through rose-coloured glasses, and I'm not being smart-ass about that either. But if everyone has a different angle on it, and we do, Brett, we go out there and we ask the questions sometimes that the mainstream media don't ask. And it's not necessarily controversial either. We just have an interest in it, and we have people wanting an interest in it and use this as an avenue. And it's really disappointing that, as you said, through Section A, B, C, 21, 24, Section dot, etc., like that, you cannot be here or do this, or you're not allowed to. It just really takes away that broad range of accessibility that's supposed to be a free world, that everyone can go around and enjoy themselves and have an outlet to look at and watch and do things. And it's just getting a little bit. But as you said, it's going to become really channeled on what people's perception's going to be.
And basically, absolutely everything will end up on Foxtel, because that's obviously the direction. They're the only people who are going to, and now that will, that's sort of another reason why I think that ARG might be interested in, or why Race might be interested in taking over ARG, is there may be a bit of feedback from Foxtel saying, we're not keen about the fact that this local motorsport stuff is popping up on Stan Sport. We need to stop that. So that would be the end of that, because if they took over ARG, then it's like, hey, if you want to watch the Shannon's Nationals at that level would probably continue, but it would definitely come under the media at Fox. It wouldn't be happening on Channel 9. It certainly wouldn't be happening on Stan either. So you would have everything happening on Foxtel, because they're the ones with the biggest pockets. Stan aren't in a position to realistically bid for Supercars at the moment.
Just another quick one on that sort of stuff on a monopoly. Knackers came out today. I saw him comment on a post as well too. Sandown was back in the news today as well, though, too, about the housing development on what year it's all going to finish up. So check that out.
What did they say?
Oh, just I only looked at the headline, so I just noticed that it was. There's obviously the date when it's going to be for sale. Look, it's going to change each year until it actually happens. But it could be 2027, could be 2028. Who knows? So it's imminent.
The only thing that we've got at the moment is, and this is, as I said, the only thing that I've got for sure is I know people in the Melbourne Racing Club who are saying to me is, we're in no mad hurry. We will, yes, it will be sold, it will be redeveloped, Sandown will be shut down for both horse racing and car racing, but at the moment, it's fine. We'll just wait until we get the right price. We're not if the house prices, if property prices continue falling, there's no hurry for us to jump now. So basically, while ever the real estate market is in a bit of a downturn, it's probably good for Sandown because it's like, well, they're not just going to leave it. They're not going to do what they did at Calder. They're not going to just leave it there and grow weeds and gather dust. They're going to keep using it because they might as well get something out of it.
They're not going to sell it too unless there's actually a property developer around that can do it, because at the moment they're all going bust or not making money anyway. Yeah. So not only the sale, there's got to be a property developer in. There's none of them around, let alone try and get a Sparky or a plumber or any tradie at the moment too.
Oh. I'm a tradie and I can't get tradies.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you. I'm a tradie and I can't get tradies either. I'm with you. We're the same, mate.
I've got Paul's comment. No money in free TV. Yes, we can vouch for that. I can definitely vouch for that, Paul. There is definitely no money in free TV.
And the teams have said since the motorsport went to pay TV, they're having terrible trouble getting sponsors and holding on to sponsors because they get less exposure than they did on free-to-air TV.
What about the fans?
Right on,
the fans are gradually going to erode over time.
Right on.
There's no promotion.
It's funny that a few years ago I've mentioned a few times I went to the Mumbrella Sports Marketing Summit, won some tickets to that, and it was really funny when we were talking. They had all of the major sports and all of the top marketing people in the world of sports and all the advertising agencies, all the television networks and all the rest. It was really funny talking to a lot of the people there who deal with other sports, and they just said, the thing that makes motor racing so radically different to every other sport we deal with is that in all of our discussions in motorsport, they never, ever mention the fans. The fans are just not, it's like, but what about the public? Well, what about the public? It just doesn't enter into their head. It's it's like as long as we got the television rights, as long as we've got the corporates behind us, as long as the people as long as the competitors keep spending ridiculous amounts of money to enter our series, the fans are a bonus. I mean, their atmosphere. We don't we'll charge whatever we like, and if we get 10,000, we get 10,000. If we get 20,000, we get 20,000. We don't, but. They're a nuisance.
Oh, well, they've perfected the last couple of years to put cheering in a can anyway, so they can just fake the audience, remember? So,
they always did. I mean, I remember when we used to be allowed to go to the Supercars, actually being in the media centre when they put out the official crowd figures and how that was sort of worked around. I mean, it was like, what's the official crowd figure? 48,000. I don't think so. 24th. Yeah, there would be negotiation between the media and as to what was 24. Yeah, you could say
just
24. Yeah, okay, 24. 24,000 fans turned up at Sandown today.
Oh,
it
look,
was
they
like,
probably had 2 or 3 guys just sitting there having a coffee saying, I reckon there's about 5 there. There's about 7 there.
That's the way we do it. It was like they would ask. Yeah, they would ask.
8.5, 8.5. All right, no, we'll go with 8.5. 9, not. We'll take 9. Anyone got 10? 10? Anyone got 10? Yeah. All right. Yeah. So it's like like an auction.
But then they all do it. We sort of like even some of the Shannon's Nationals as well. I've seen some figures popped out there about a fabulous crowd at Phillip Island for 15,000, 20,000 people turned up, and you went, no, there was a smaller crowd there than there was at the Victorian State Round, and they had about 3,500, and that was a really good figure for them. So there was no way, even if you counted everybody 3 times, there was no way that there was 15,000 at that meeting.
Oh, there's no exaggeration goes on whatsoever.
Not at all.
They probably count the birds that were flying over the top as well at the same time. What's Roy saying?
Yeah, well, as you said, something that's been building for the last 20 years, caring less and less over the fans. If you have a look at, go on your Facebook. There's a lot of Facebook pages, sort of, motorsport memories, historic photos, and you'll see sort of, like shots from the 1970s from Calder and Oran Park and Sandown, where the place was absolutely packed to the rafters. You couldn't move into the joint. I mean, I used to wag school every Monday before for a Sandown meeting, so that I could go into the light car club offices in South Melbourne, down at Albert Park, to go in Queens Road, go in there to get a reserved grandstand seat, because it was the only way you could get it back in those days, was to go into the light car club and buy one. And the reason I did that is because that was the only way that I had any guarantee of getting a seat in the grandstand, because the grandstand was packed to the rafters. It was literally standing room only.
Remember when Fangio came out, the crowd for that?
Yeah, that was
8. Yeah, huge.
Yeah, that was over 50,000, and it looked like over 50,000. And that's not a 4-day thing or a 3-day thing. That was on race day. There were definitely 50,000 people in that there on that weekend with the Australian Grand Prix and Fangio. It was packed. They used to have, like, even for basic meetings, you'd have people in the grandstand. You'd have people up on the hill up at Rothmans Rise. You'd have people down at the Red Hill area, but you'd also have people. You used to be able to watch from the infield as well. You had to stand behind the second set of rails on the horse track, and you'd have people lined up on the horse track all the way up the back straight and all the way down the front straight.
That's right.
The last time that anyone listened to the fans in the last couple of years, but you can't remember much before that, was actually when Mark Larkham got the sack a couple of years ago, and there was outrage, and due to public opinion, they reinstated him. And that's funny enough. There's another particular girl named Rihanna that's also been reinstated now, because after much dismay, her leaving and going over to bikes for a while, that she's been welcomed back with open arms too. So it's funny that other than that, they don't really listen to the fans much here in Australia unless there's outrage and they tell them they're going to boycott and not go to races anymore and not watch them anymore and cancel all their subscriptions.
But that was the thing. Like, Don Panos was always his motto for the American Le Mans series was for the fans, and everybody said, "My God, how revolutionary!" And it's probably indicative of of the state of motorsport. The mentality around the world is every other sport is very much fan focused. That's what, when on this panel, there was a guy from the AFL, and it was like, how important are the fans? And he said, the fans are number one. The fans are the first, any decisions we make, first and foremost, is in order to keep our fan base, because our fan base is our most valuable asset. And the guy from the rugby league was saying the same thing. There was a guy from soccer saying, yes, we would love to get more people in. We're doing everything we can to try and get more people in, make it more inclusive, to encourage younger people and people from diverse backgrounds and more women and more children and all the rest of it, families. We want to make it a great experience.
Less flares.
Whatever. But motorsport wasn't even there, and they were in for, as I said, AFL was there, Cricket Australia was there, Athletics Australia, all of the big sports were there.
Tennis.
And Tennis Australia, everybody. There was no one. I said, where's someone from motor racing? That's what I get every time I say this. People have a go at me, but this is from one of the top sports marketers in Australia, who is responsible for millions and millions of dollars worth of campaigns around the country. And I said, what about motor racing? And she laughed and said, male, stale and pale. It's finished.
And this year, after the Grand Prix, I know he's a good friend of his supports in pit lane, but Andrew Westcott was quoted in the media as saying, and maybe I'm a bit sensitive because I'm in this age group, but he was saying how wonderful it was that there are lots of people that attended under 50.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we know ourselves. I mean, look at us. I mean, and Richard and I are, in that cohort. There are times when I've been to motorsport, like to clubs to talk at motorsport clubs and all the rest of it, where I will be the youngest person in the room. I'm 61 years old, for God's sake.
He's it's porcupine. He's really 41, but anyway.
Yeah. I wish. Actually, the doctor yesterday with the specialist came in, and the doctor who was talking to the specialist said, "Oh, this is Mr. Ramsey. He's a 73-year-old man."
Oh, you're cheeky.
I said, "Thank you very much." Like, oh, I'm sorry, you're not. Oh, you're only 61. Oh, sorry.
Correction, Your Honour.
Yeah, it's like when the. Yeah, it's like when they've done the carbon dating, and they've certainly dated me. It's as I said, look, I'd be happy if I get to 73. I'll be happy. So and even in this state. Anyway, yeah.
Hopefully we're not going.
We could keep going all night, couldn't we?
We're not going to. Yeah, hopefully we're not going to the as on the Muppet Show when the doctors are in the surgery, and hope we're not going to the doghouse where we're going to get the flat line here in Australia with motorsport. Let's try and do some positive stuff. Well, there you go. MotoGP this weekend.
Quickly, let's wind up with that.
Yep. MotoGP's in Silverstone. The British GP is on this weekend, dear chaps. It should be a fantastic weekend of racing with those two wheels going around the track. Anywho, Dovizioso has come out and said the last couple of days, a bit of speculation. He says there's not much difference between a satellite team and a factory bike anymore. So thanks, Dobby. You're not going to be with us next year anyway. But if he's talking the truth, well, there you go. It could be. So even if Jack Thriller Miller had to jump back on a satellite team next year, he might have gone just as well on a Pramac.
And congratulations to Jack Miller as well too. He's put up his hand and he's investing back in the future of the sport in Australia with his own superbike team. So that's fabulous to see him putting in his money and supporting the sport at a local level. That's fantastic. Also, Aprilia has come out and said that they really would like to see a Formula One style salary cap and cost cap for the sport before it gets totally out of control money wise, and that's probably a good idea. Get in on that now before it gets out of control like it did in Formula One. So. That'll be discussed on the weekend. But anyway, it'll be good to see the bikes back on the weekend, the MotoGP. If you do have Foxtel, once again, unless you have Foxtel or KO, you're not going to see any of it or hear any of it. But if you do, watch it and enjoy it. Winton Historic.
One more bit of news. There was a gossip of VR46 team being sold back in 2021 to the Saudis. That was just a whole rumor, and Valentino put that one right out the door as quick as he could, like the Fred Flintstone cat. However, he has sold a VR46, the Moto2 team, to a conglomerate called Fantic, I think it's called. So that's going to be absorbed by Fantic. So I'm not sure. Maybe he's taking his focus away from two wheels a little bit and enjoying might have enjoyed his time at Spa on the weekend on the 24 hour. So. Valentino's a little bit of a sale there. But tune in. It's great that bikes are back off their summer holiday, and now a few contractual things are out of the way as well too. Hopefully they can get out there and just have a race and enjoy themselves.
Yes, that's coming up on the weekend. Also coming up on the weekend, I actually was going to go up to Winton, and thankfully, under the circumstances, I pulled the plug on that earlier in the week. But yes, so the racing up at Winton on the weekend, and that will be live streamed. So if you want to check that out, that's live streamed, and also
YouTube it themselves, and also another media source.
Yes, with Blindline TV, who do an amazing job for grassroots motorsport. Apparently, they ask for nothing in return apart from $20,000 a round. That's doing a wonderful job. Thank you for your support of the sport. The goodness of their own heart and $23,000.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's coming up. Also down at Phillip Island. Unfortunately, the Phillip Island thing, and we'll see this increasingly. The Phillip Island August Access and the Supercarts down there. Big fields for the national meeting for the Supercarts. Unfortunately, that is not open to the public, and I don't think, because I'd sort of made the commitment to Winton, I hadn't sort of organised to get down there. And the weather's going to be terrible this weekend anyway. So, good luck to the Supercart guys in particular. Gale force winds and torrential rain at Phillip Island is bad at the best of times. But when you're driving a Supercart, my God.
Remember us filming at Siberia?
Oh God, yes. So as I said, there was one meeting where we lost crew members literally to hypothermia. People ended up with hypothermia that weekend. So
fortunately, it wasn't a wave crashing over the beach either.
Yep. So anyway, we'll see you next week, and hopefully get back to. We'll get back to some normality now. In Pit Lane will be returning on Channel 31 on Thursday, the 1st of September. But not. I did say 8 o'clock. I was told 8 o'clock would be the time slot. Now, apparently, that might not be the case. I should know. Hopefully, by this time next week, I'll know when the exact time will be. But they're saying that it might actually be moved a little later, but we're not sure at this stage.
We're not doing the 6 o'clock news.
I hope it's later than 6 o'clock. I think 8 o'clock is 8 o'clock is fine, but perhaps a little early. But 8 o'clock is fine. 9 o'clock we could live with,
and not the 9 o'clock news. Remember that?
Oh yes, very much. That's a show that is dated really. Go and have a look on YouTube and watch it. That's a show that's dated really, really badly. Okay, everybody, thanks a lot for joining us again. Thanks for your support of what we're doing. We just do this stuff because whatever, we just do it. So anyway, we'll come back and we'll do it again next week. Thanks for joining us, and from all of us here at Full Course Yellow and in Pit Lane, we'll see you next week. Until then, bye for now. Bye.
Good night.
Have a great weekend.
All right.